Want to open a work session meeting tonight for Monday, August the 3rd, 2020. First item tonight on the agenda is presentation of all meters pertaining to Cherrydale Apartments. Turn it over to you, Mr. Dick.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I was approached by Mr. Allmeter about a special use permit for some of the apartment complex, Cherrydale apartment complex. Asking a few questions and then asked if he could have an opportunity to approach council with his idea of what he would like to do, understanding that he still has to run through planning commission, but kind of wanted to get a pulse from this council before he did that. So I asked the mayor if I could have 5 minutes to have Mr. Allmeter come here tonight and share it with council, and then we'll go from there. So, Paul, if you don't mind, if you want to come up here and share it there.
Pass these out.
Sure.
So you'll notice I didn't have a color printer, so these are all hand drawn. So a lot of time went into this. So basically, what I have here is the in black ink the outline of the Cherrydale apartments that I own currently from Mr. Costello, and there's these two single-family houses kind of stuck in the middle where you would logically think there would have been 4-unit buildings, and I don't know the history there, but my thought was I would like to demolish those and build a 6-unit building in their stead, which would be similar in size and shape to the 4-unit, probably slightly larger, but we would have a basement. Which would get us the additional 2 units. All these 4-unit existing buildings are 2/2. So they're on crawl space, so with the addition of a basement, you would have a similar size and appearance as the rest, but that would get you the additional 2 units. It's R3 zone, so according to the zoning code, it says that for apartment buildings, an SUP permit is required. I do believe I would be able to meet all the other zoning requirements, so no variance would be needed. In the center would be parking spaces, off-street parking. Currently, everything on Cherrydale has on-street parking, so we would try to get as many parking spaces in there as we could. I think definitely enough for the 6-unit buildings and potentially enough for that existing 4-unit building that would remain. So that was the idea. It's not, I mean, this would be definitely, I think, classified as workforce housing. It's not, a Class A type of apartment scenario. So, I wanted to kind of gauge, what people thought on this before I start putting money into it, because really the only way to make this kind of workforce housing economically feasible, I think, is to either own the land existing like I do, or acquire it at a very, very bargain rate. So that was my thinking, was I own the land, we've got these single families here, why not get some apartment buildings in there that kind of give it some more uniformity down to the street. And also, if you go on Zillow, there's about 3 houses or apartments to rent in the whole city right now, so there seems to be a demand. So that was my thoughts.
Are there 2 or 3 buildings that are going to remove?
So it would be 2. So if you see in the black where I have dotted around on the 6-unit, I've written singles. So on the left you've got 408 Cherrydale, and on the right side of that 4-unit building you've got 394 Cherrydale. So in their place, the 6-unit buildings would be built.
So you'd go from single to 6 units, so
Yes,
you'd
ma'am.
increase 5 for each of those.
Yes,
So an
ma'am.
additional 10.
Yes, ma'am. We have, so the area I've got drawn out in red encompasses approximately 10 lots, which are 25 feet wide apiece. Those would be combined to make one large lot of approximately 250 feet by 158 feet deep.
And you'll be adding parking? There isn't already existing parking?
There's currently no off-street parking on any of these apartments. So we would be adding parking in the middle of these 3 units, the 2 6s and the existing
But
4.
you're really only adding 4 apartments. The buildings already have 4.
building.
You're gonna remove.
Well, no, so these are single families for some reason. They were built as single family. If you drive down
Okay, I know
Cherrydale,
where they're at.
yeah, you'll see these two
Single
little
family.
single families kind of where common sense would have thought there'd be a 4-unit apartment building.
Right, the apartments are just to the left of this.
Yes, sir. So you know, on the left of the red, you've got this U shape of 4 units. On the right side, you've got this U shape of 4 units. In the middle, you've got the 4-unit, and then these are just single families for some reason. I don't know the history there, but that's the way it was built. There seems to be as much or more land than the 4-unit complexes on the left and right.
I think they were there first.
What's the age of those?
Someone
buildings?
told me
I
that
lived on
they were
Compton
built
Avenue.
as managers' houses for
Yeah.
the industry. I forget.
Avtex.
Avtex. Someone told me they were managers' houses.
That used to be called Industrial Avenue
Okay.
years ago.
Okay. So that is the proposed. Yeah, I don't know if that wasn't clear to anyone. Anyone had?
I was just asking, what's the age of the 4-unit building in the back?
I believe they're all the same. The city doesn't have any data on it, but 1947 is kind of what we've come up with.
Did you plan on doing anything with that one in the back?
No.
Okay.
That we're gonna leave that one the same, as is. Other than, you know, trying to get the parking lot in the middle of the units.
So it would displace those 2 families, but I'm assuming they would have the opportunity to
Yes,
in
ma'am.
the buildings.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I mean, you know, as long as construction is, yes, it
Yeah.
would replace them, but
Sure.
unfortunately.
Any other questions? Guess your next step is zoning.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Good luck.
Yeah.
I just have one.
Yes, sir.
Accessibility units, you're gonna have 2 in here?
To,
Building 2 apartments that are accessible.
on ground level, you mean?
ADA.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So 2, yeah, so it would be 2 top
Yeah,
floor,
yeah.
2 on the first floor, which would be handicap
Yes,
accessible,
sir.
and then 2 in the basement.
Yes, sir, that's what I thought.
And these would be 2-bedroom units
Yes, sir.
each one.
Anyone else?
Thank
Thank you.
All right. You guys can hang on to this.
Item 2 tonight is mural update.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm pleased to say that we're making good progress on murals in our community. We have an ad hoc group that is just an advisory group that are passionate individuals, artists themselves, who have put together some proposed ideas for you to consider. And one of the strongest members on the committee happens to be here tonight, our deputy clerk, Mary Ellen. And so we thought we'd have Mary Ellen hand out what this little group has put together, and
No, I'm not an artist. Yeah, and my sister.
so the last time we brought it up to the council, council wanted to have a general idea, but, give some broad guidance as far as themes and quality, et cetera. So Mary Ellen, why don't you, if you would, walk them through what your committee has done and.
Okay, so the goal will be, we've already identified some property owners that are interested in having murals. One of them is actually in our group. Her name is Melissa Ikiyuji. She owns the building on the corner of Cloud and Main Street. And we would help them go through the process of getting approved to have a mural as the process exists now. And then the next piece would be to put out a call for artists, which this is where the last time we talked about it, you guys had asked for us to put together some kind of a theme so that we can get some uniform subject matter, essentially curate the murals. And that's, we wrote up a sample of what the RF2 could look like. So the theme essentially is, subject matter should be a positive reflection of the natural elements and/or culture of Front Royal, Warren County, and the Shenandoah Valley. Examples include, but are not limited to, skies, mountains, river, flora, and fauna. And we actually did come up with some samples, which this isn't an exact representation of what we would get, but here's one that my sister made that's kind of a good representation of something you might possibly receive from an artist. Contemporary, still rivers, mountains, that kind of thing. I've got some more and I can pass them around to you guys. But what we were thinking is, we get the submissions from, there's a whole slew of different examples.
Thank you.
The artists, and then we would narrow them down, and then we would bring them to the CDBG advisory board and or you all for final approval. Now, all of these examples are on Melissa's building, just because she's already gotten the approval, and her mural concept that she'd like to have is actually the clouds.
So just to reiterate at one point, the mural designs would not be coming to council for formal approval.
Okay.
That's a level in the weeds you guys probably don't want to get into. But they are drafting this call for artists in such a way to allow for artistic flexibility or creativity, but at the same time trying to give them some general parameters of what the community is looking for, and you being the community, representation of the community. So so we want to get some guidance from you on if this is the intent of what you're looking for. If not, then please give us greater direction. We have a CDBG meeting tomorrow night where we hope to talk in more detail about the RFQ for the call for artists. As you know, the CDBG we've requested up to $50,000 to be allocated towards murals for anywhere from 5 or 7 buildings. I think I've seen them. They're really neat.
The other thing we talked about is reaching out to muralists that are already established, because that also promotes tourism and things of that nature, because people would come to see their work.
Thoughts, comments?
I really like it. So is the intent to paint the whole building, or a direction on the size and scope of that?
I think it depends on the building.
Yeah.
That was just the building, for example.
Yeah, this is just an example. Because we wanted to. I'm very visual. I can't grasp
Sure.
artistic concepts. So I asked.
That's true.
Yeah.
This is the side of the old Ramsey's hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's already approved to put a mural there. We just drafted up a whole slew of examples to just kind of show you the kinds of things we might get based on the theme that we put together.
And you may recall in the historic district, a mural such as this has to go through the BAR.
Right, which that would be part of the process we would help the building owners go through.
But she's already gone through it.
She's
Yes.
already approved.
She's done, all she's got is payment, right?
Right, yep, she has to, yeah, exactly, put it up.
Pretty neat.
Ooh.
Isn't that neat?
I like that one too.
Isn't that neat?
I think it'd be great. I like the idea of murals. I like the idea of both mixed, local, and if there's opportunities to have some outside arts, I think that's great too. Being a draw. I like the theme, and if we're able to stick to that theme, I think that would be really great. What I'd like to stay away from are things that are a little bit more of political statements or, political statements, and sticking more towards our natural art.
The second major phase of the murals, the second major phase is the maintenance. In other words, once it's painted, what criteria is going to be put in place in order to maintain. So there's a lot of different aspects to it.
Yeah, we
But,
just.
we're taking the approach, let's get something started, and then we can, refine the scope. So hearing no objections, if you guys are satisfied with this basic theme, we'll continue along this path.
This is
the CDBG.
Yes.
Answer your
I know.
question, we wanna get big, as big as we can afford to do.
Like, we have issues about parameters and time frame. Does this have to be done in a certain time frame?
Yeah, that's all part of the same.
So when does it have to be done?
Yeah.
We're-
Was
We've
this
we've
was
asked, we've asked for an
We've
extension,
got interest
so we're
on
waiting on
that
hearing
right
back
now.
if we're gonna get a 6-month extension.
Melissa's building.
Because I was gonna say, they've got a lot to do, this is
That's
August.
Yeah,
actually
no,
a real
no,
concept
yeah, we've
that
asked
she's
for an
gonna do.
extension.
Okay.
Yeah.
The whole big tower.
She wants to make it that big. Yeah, I know, really, thought outside the box.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report. Was there any more of these left over?
I have one more, do you need it?
Yeah, if I could get,
Roger is raising.
did y'all get any?
I can email it to you if you
We good?
Cross out the or town council.
Yeah, this is all, it was just kind of like a rough draft.
Just so you guys know while
situation.
you all were looking, I was asking Matt about like time frame, and they haven't asked for an extension for this, because I was saying if this had to be done by September,
I know.
you got a lot to do.
A lot to do.
Yeah, okay.
That concludes my report, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
thank you. Third item tonight is Second Amendment resolution.
Mr. Mayor, it was brought before council, I believe it was 2 regular meetings ago, a proposed Second Amendment resolution. We have included that in the packet tonight for discussion. I believe Mr. Napier is prepared to answer any questions that council may have regarding the resolution.
In looking at the papers that we've had marked, highlighted in yellow, I'd like for Doug to explain that to us, please.
Okay, Mr. Napier?
I'm going to take my mask off because it's kind of hard to talk with this thing on. What this resolution does is if it's passed in its entirety, what it would do would be to not allow the town to pass an ordinance which would ban firearms in town-owned buildings. And right now, until this session of the General Assembly, localities were not allowed to pass any ordinances which differed from whatever laws the state passed. And basically what that did was the town, any locality did not have any control at all over dealing with firearms. Now localities, including the town, are allowed to allow firearms, they are allowed not to allow firearms. And obviously this is something that is a political and policy issue as opposed to a legal issue, but a few of the issues that you should consider, I feel, in dealing with this is if the resolution is passed in its entirety, do you feel comfortable with allowing the public to bring firearms in the town hall? We have ladies in the finance department downstairs dealing with members of the public who have their utilities cut off, and sometimes people get a little agitated with that. During town council meetings, usually we have one police officer in these meetings, and you may have multiple members of the public who would have firearms on them, maybe concealed weapons, and would you feel comfortable in that situation? Normally, there are no police officers during BZA meetings, BAR meetings, and Planning Commission meetings, and some of those get pretty heated. And would you feel comfortable having BZA members, BAR members, and Planning Commission members in those situations where there are no police officers? In the gazebo area in Bowman Park area, Bowman Park in particular, alcohol is currently not permitted. Do you want members of the public to be able to carry weapons and possibly be drinking, even though alcohol is not permitted? And then under the town employee handbook, employees are not allowed to carry firearms. So if employees are not allowed to have firearms and the public does, do you want to change the handbook, or do you want to allow employees to carry firearms? And then the issue is, do you want employees to have firearms? Some employees may be able to be trusted to have firearms during work hours, and some employees may not be, feel like, ought to have firearms during work hours, because you have all types of employees working for the town. So these are just some of the issues that you may want to consider.
Doug, this resolution affects our employee handbook directly?
Not directly, but right now the employee handbook does not allow employees to carry weapons of any type.
Okay, so, but we wouldn't have to address that. You're only saying address that if we wanted to consider our employees having handguns to defend themselves against crazy people coming in ready to shoot up the place.
Right.
Okay, but that doesn't have bearing on the resolution here
Not
tonight.
directly, but if you prohibit anyone from, if you, in essence, the resolution does not allow, word this correctly, would not allow the town to control anyone from not carrying a firearm, except the handbook does not allow employees to have firearms. So everybody but employees could carry firearms.
How do, Mr. Teacher, how do we police that now when people come into the building?
It's not policed.
That's what I don't understand. When I read and reread the third time, how does that protect the town hall? I don't understand it. I mean,
Well, basically what it really doesn't.
it's an after fact.
Yeah, except you're sort of advertising to people, you're free to bring in firearms. I think most people probably believe that they're not supposed to carry firearms because the courthouse does not allow people to bring firearms. I think most people probably intuitively think that you're not supposed to bring in firearms to a government building.
So it's after fact. So there must, so what you're saying is, if I've read this properly, you would recommend that the town hall be excluded from firearms.
I'm not really recommending anything. I'm just pointing out issues.
Okay, where does this tell me that?
This resolution?
Yeah, specific.
Oh, the resolution is saying that people are free to carry in firearms on any town-owned property.
It's the first it's the second to the bottom paragraph really summarizes it. It says that the town council hereby declares Front Royal shall not exercise any authority of the code to regulate or prohibit the otherwise legal purchase, possession, and transfer of firearms and ammunition.
Right now, under the state code, the town could prohibit carrying in firearms into town-owned property. And what the resolution would say is, if you pass it, the town could not exercise its authority to prohibit firearms.
Could not or would not?
Or would not.
You said could not.
Well, if you pass a resolution, you could not. You would be limiting yourself.
One area I had a question is about, is not carrying firearms into the town council meeting when we don't really own that building where we hold our regular town council meetings. So I'm just saying, like, I don't know that would be, I don't know how that would work since we actually meet in the county's building. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I almost feel like that particular area would be controlled by what the board of supervisors determine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're, but the other things, yes.
Now, you could pass an ordinance which would allow people to carry firearms on particular pieces of property in the town. You could get complicated and allow certain town employees to carry firearms and certain employees not to. You can make it as complicated or uncomplicated as you want. But I mean, that's a town council decision.
So I have no desire to change our handbook on employee policy for this, but again, that's why I get back to, I don't think this has any bearing on that. I mean, I'll leave that up to a strategic, what he wants to do with policy for a town handbook.
I would think if we go forward with this resolution and we're allowing the public to bring in, their guns if they have them or they want to, then I think the employees should also have the same ability.
That doesn't bother me, but I'm just saying,
Don't get a disgruntled employee.
what's that?
Just hope you don't get a disgruntled employee with a gun.
You can get a disgruntled anybody, right?
So you can get a disgruntled citizen and be disgruntled. I mean, I work in an environment where we aren't allowed to either as well. However, we have somebody in our building that can.
Was the chief of
But not
police
everybody
in the
becomes it.
discussion on this resolution?
Sure. I don't know who he is.
We've had the issue at the county building before because it's not posted and it doesn't fall to any of our guidelines where people have come to council meetings and have seen the arms, but there wasn't anything to do with that at the time. It was pointed out to me before. And the handbook's pretty clear. I mean, gosh, it even applies to you guys. So.
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of council, we don't have to take any action tonight necessarily, unless you're prepared to take some action and put it on a future agenda, or we can, bring it up at a future work session and talk through it some more. I'm looking for your
I think
pleasure.
it needs some more talk in my estimate.
If it seems like the intent is not to restrict well, I know how this is written, but it seemed to me that the intent that Paul originally brought this forward was to not change anything that's going to restrict rights to carry guns in our town that differs from what currently exists today. That's what I thought the original intent was.
I think it was.
And I think that this, based on what Mr. Napier has brought up, I think the only part of this that has given us pause is the allowing, if we vote on it the way it's written today, if we vote on it the way it is today, it would not only allow us to keep what we currently have as far as the standard and the law for carrying guns, but it would increase it to allow citizens to carry into government buildings, which they currently are not allowed to do. So it seems to me that if, I would have to ask Paul, so this would go back on the resolution, it seems to me if this was written as such where it still followed the current law of no guns in our government buildings, but it continued to allow the carry of, or ownership and carry of guns out in the public, that would be what we can do today. Am I misunderstanding that, or is that correct, Mr. Napier?
You're talking to me.
Yes, sir.
I think that's pretty close to it.
Okay.
I'm not sure it don't matter who has a gun, if it's concealed, you gotta have a gun permit.
Sure.
That's issued
Sure,
through the
well-
state. Now, you can carry a gun if it's not concealed anywhere you want to.
Open carry, yeah.
Yeah,
Except for government buildings.
well, yeah, sure, at this point.
Right.
So, it does affect it to some degree, and yet it doesn't affect it as well. But if we allow to bring them in a building like town hall, whatever, then they would have to have a gun permit plus our authorization. Now, if this is passed, that would give them the authorization to use, or bring them in, is that correct?
It would, it would extend it, open carry into government buildings, right?
Correct.
Which currently is not the case.
Is that the point that he was trying to make, open carry versus concealed?
It's not specified.
I think so.
That's where I'm
I mean,
hung up.
I haven't talked to
Of
him.
government buildings.
Yeah, I think that's, yes, sir.
I'll message.
I'm okay with having a little bit more clarification around the language on that and what it does, and then bring it back up at the next work session.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah, we just discussed, we should probably get some more input from Paul and what they were.
And so next work session, you said, what date is that?
If y'all have any questions, get in contact with Doug or whoever that can give you the answers. Or it comes back at the next meeting anyway. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Alter, for that.
Next item is item number 4, resolution COVID-19 infectious disease preparedness / response plan. Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We have Laura McIntosh, our risk manager, here this evening, right there. Just to add an additional aside here, Laura's done a phenomenal job as our risk manager during this COVID process. I believe we are on the 6th version of our policies and procedures. Is that accurate?
The leave policies.
Yeah, leave policies. And I'm pleased to say that on the 3rd version, I believe it was, or 4th version, the HR director from a large jurisdiction towards the east got a copy of it. And Laura's policy became almost statewide HR policy for all the localities. That's how much she's been on the cutting edge of these legal aspects and the impact of HR. So, I personally want to thank her for just being a super employee and keeping us all on track with that. So, Laura, I'll turn it over to you so you can explain the VOSH guidelines and what's being required.
I'm not really sure how in the weeds you guys want to get, so I was just going to give like a quick overview and then you can kind of go from there. So Virginia was actually the first state in the nation to adopt mandatory regulations for all workplaces in response to COVID-19. At the direction of Governor Northam, they've developed and implemented policies in an emergency temporary standard that's supposed to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and protect Virginia's workers in the process. VOSH published the standard last Monday on the 27th, and that's when the day it became effective, was last Monday. It's designed to establish requirements for employers to help control, prevent, and mitigate the spread of COVID-19. And it applies to all employees and employers under the jurisdiction of VOSH, which includes us. The town is required under this to adopt a written plan, which is called the Infectious Disease Preparedness and Response Plan, and we have to do it within 60 days of when it became effective, which was last Monday. I am happy to go through this and highlight it if you want to, or I don't know if you've already looked at it, if you have questions for me, or however you want to do it.
I only had one thing, and this may just be maybe a nitpicky, which please don't take it that way, is the part under the employer requirements, if necessary, the police department should be utilized for the safe transport of an employee to their home or healthcare provider. And I guess in my head, I was just thinking that that would put possibly somebody from the police department at risk. And I'm not sure that we have extra people there. Does that make sense? And I'm thinking does that sound like I'm overly, I just was thinking like, I mean, if they need to get home or to their healthcare provider, I understand that would be, that we want to try to help them, but on the same thing, I'm thinking, do we want to expose somebody else that then could turn around and expose others? I don't know how that, but I don't know how else you'd handle that.
No, I understand. And we had previously talked about it with the police department because they have all the protocols in place as far as PPE and everything, and the vehicles and everything to be able to safely do these transports. Am I correct on that?
Yes, we still have decon situations set up if we do have to do something like that. It certainly wouldn't be preferred, but the capability is there.
They're the most qualified
Right.
of anyone.
Okay.
In the event it gets to that point, I mean, frankly, that's the last resort.
Yeah, that would be very serious situation.
Well, I know when COVID first started, that was actually, I know with Valley Health, I think that was one of the methods is that if a person thought they had it, they weren't supposed to just come to the hospital, right? They were supposed to, that was not, the idea wasn't that, and I think law enforcement was part of that equation of transport. So it was just in my head, I was just thinking, we don't want all the police department to come down with it, and then that was all I was thinking, but like I said, it sounds like you all thought this well beyond me, so.
No, not at all, and it's something that, you're right, at this point in time, it may just be calling emergency, call the ambulance, we not need that part in there, and it can be removed.
Everything else meets all state requirements.
Yes, sir. It was actually, Versa, the VML, Versa, our insurance company, they have two people that work there. One used to work for OSHA and one used to work for Vogue. So they are very well scripted in this stuff, and they've passed on a lot of guidance to us, and they kind of outlined this plan to where we just kind of filled in the blanks. Yeah.
Quick questions.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if this matters or splitting hair, but close contact talks about under the definitions of 2 days. I don't know if it'd be worth specifying that should be 48 hours of contact. 2 days can be a little bit ambiguous if you're splitting over a period of 3 days, but somebody could have been in contact the third day prior, if it touches that 48-hour period. If that makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Which page is that?
That's under the definitions, under close contact. That's actually come in really handy when we're trying to figure out some of the contract chasing of our employees. And then I didn't see it in here, and I did go through, so I just wondered if it was in here. If employees are classified as low risk, if they're working in close proximity and under 6 feet next to each other, but both are wearing masks, one person tests positive for COVID, what do we do with the other person? Do we consider them low risk and still let them work, or are we sending that person off as well?
Yeah, we're sending that person off as well.
Okay.
A lot of that, a lot more information, especially when it comes to that kind of stuff, is in our actual leave policies. It outlines CDC guidelines and gives you step-by-step what to do when the situation happens. This particular plan doesn't have all of that in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're sending them home, and they would.
So it's something just for consideration. You could lose 4 or 5 people at one time that way. I don't know if unless everybody's completely spread out. I don't necessarily know, but you can lose a lot of people quickly. But the whole point of wearing mask to mask and enforcing a universal source control policy of everybody always wearing masks is that you protect yourself from that. One person tests positive because they were, I don't know, grocery shop without a mask or something, and the rest of the crew would end up being low risk and not have to be sent home if everybody was wearing a mask around them because they're deemed low risk. And still following your temperature policy in the morning and things like that. Just something for consideration so you don't lose half a department.
And it's been very sticky with those too, when you have people that, oh, I saw someone this weekend who might have COVID, and we're like, no, that's not close enough in proximity, because we do have that listed on our leave guidelines. But when it comes to an actual employee here, and really all this calls for is communication. You have to make sure you communicate to your people, hey, somebody tested positive and you've been in the vicinity of them, you've worked with them. Really, it's not required in here to send them home. I just
That's where
said
the
that
mask,
off the top of my head because I'm HR and I'm like, oh.
no, that's a
go
perfect
home.
example. That's exactly what we're coming to. But that's where the mask, if everybody's wearing masks, that's where you say, keep doing your temperature checks. If anything changes, let us know, but everybody else is good so long as everybody's following the policy with masking.
Jim, going back to the question you asked first time, where's it at, and do you want that changed in this before we?
I suggested the definitions of close contact be 48 hours. It sounds like what I hear you saying, Laura, is that what I'm recommending on the mask to mask, that's really more of the personal leave policy that you guys are managing. And that's fine. I was just throwing that out there for a suggestion.
So you feel okay with what's in here?
Yeah, I recommend it on the 48 hours on the definition instead of 2 days and that.
So if there's no other significant changes, members of council, Mr. Mayor, I can put this on to the next regular meeting, or if you need another work session, we have time.
I think it's good.
I'm good.
Say let's put it on the agenda.
Okay.
It's pretty extensive. It's a good job.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Next item tonight is item 5, South Street improvements from Hill Street to the World Plaza Shopping Center.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We, I want to say it was like what was it, Thursday or Friday, Robbie? When do we get the Vdot?
Finally.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was Friday. We got version 2 of South Street. And we need that in order to, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to do my full screen here. We need to do that. We have one version. It's going to be in this packet as well as the original screen, and then we'll also we have an option 2.
Which is the new one. Last week.
Y'all see that okay? I'll turn it over to Mr. Boyer, and he can, here's some. Everybody get a copy? Good?
We have Adam Campbell here tonight with Vdot. He's been working with us on the Smart School application. As Mr. Teeter said, we got the alternative 2 drawing last week. That's the newest update from Vdot. The Smart Scale application deadline is August 14th, so that's why we're trying to keep this moving. The Smart Scale program is 100% funded through Vdot. It's a lot slower process than the revenue sharing. If you read through here, if the town was selected for the Smart Scale process, it would be about 5 years before you got the money to do the preliminary engineering. Then about another 4 to 5 years before you could actually start construction. This is the same program the county had used for their Happy Creek programs several years ago. That's why they haven't started yet. South Street, the alternative 1 had more islands. Both of them calls for a new street light there at Blue Ridge and South. One thing, talking with Adam this evening, the original estimate for alternative 1 was like 1.9. Since they've updated, it was 2.6. The second alternative, we haven't got the price yet, but it looks like about $2 million because it has a lot less medians. I think Adam was like $1 million, and alternative 1 just for islands.
Correct.
So that's where a lot of your difference is. They tried to look at the flow of traffic, make the pedestrian stuff safer, and plus with that all being an alternative truck route, also take that into consideration. But like I said, alternative 1 was the original design. I don't know, Brad, you remember when that was completed?
It was a variation of one of the recommendations from the corridor study we finished for the town in 2006, and then we just modified it in late 2019, early 2020.
This, like I said, this was the old estimate for the 1.9, which now would be 2.6 for alternative 1. And then this is the newest one that they finished last week. That they think would be the better fit for that area there for the flow of traffic and safety. You got anything else you want to add to that, Adam?
And a lot of the change has to do with, in order to implement the median improvements to make it safer for pedestrians out there, you've got to drop one direction as a segment of one lane, one through lane, just for one block. At first, we were doing the westbound movement as the one lane drop. During the peak hour in the PM, it's much heavier westbound than the AM peak hour is eastbound. So our traffic engineering folks decided it'd be more efficient to drop the lane to a single through lane in the eastbound direction with this revised concept.
Well, I think that's pretty smart, because if we cut that thing down to one lane during the fall season, we're gonna have major issues. So we can keep those 2 lanes flowing east or west, actually, at all times. I think that would be it. It behooves us to go with that program without even thinking about the one lane.
You know how bad it is now with the park?
Oh, yeah, I do. Very well, very well.
So I guess the big thing is we just need to kind of see which way. We have to finish by the 14th with the application to get it submitted. We will have to do a draft resolutions due the 14th too, if I remember correct.
No, with COVID, the state decided to extend the resolution to August 1st, or October 1st, so you have time on the locality resolution.
That's for the final resolution, signed resolution, correct?
Right, but nothing has, you could just put a placeholder
Yeah.
in with the final, but yeah, a signed resolution not until October 1st.
How long will it take just the process after, I mean, if you bring us, so if we do the resolution, how long will that take to get it back to you guys in order to get it started? far as through the smart scale.
In terms of once the application's submitted, how long until a decision's made?
Well, no, how long do we have to go ahead and get this thing moving along in order that you can have it so that you get it there on time? You said October.
Yeah, the only
But when do you
requirement
really
is,
need it?
the only requirement is that it has to be discussed and approved at a typical council public meeting. So anytime between here and there, it just needs to be finished and signed by the October 1st deadline.
But we need to finish the application by the 14th,
The application is due Monday the 17th.
17th. Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have to approve it before you do the application?
Well, yeah, I mean, we should at least have a good consensus, because, once we put it in, and it's done, then, it's closed out, we can't
Okay,
change it.
can we pass a resolution without going to that public hearing? And then the public hearing comes later, or does the
You
public
can
hearing?
go ahead and
come
submit,
first?
if you wanted to just discuss a resolution within a work setting like this, a work group setting, you can go ahead and submit, if there's an agreed upon language, you can go ahead and submit it. And then you can follow that up with the one that you actually hold your public meeting, your public hearing with.
As long as it's by October.
Correct.
Yep.
All right. Anybody any questions that we want to go ahead and take care of?
Does this,
2.6 now. Almost
do we have to select a design now, or can it be modified later as we go?
Right, the alternative too is what Vdot is saying would be the best, as for flow traffic, safety, and for the truck route, that they feel as of now.
Is there any way to get by without a second light when you're, the second light on the, I guess it's the Blue Ridge Avenue? If you're gonna be doing a right in, right out, on the one side, how come we need a stoplight there to the other side?
I think it's to add the pedestrian signals,
You
right?
can do the left or right there, it looks like.
The idea of the second signal head here, when we did the corridor study, the town council first asked if we could evaluate a road diet, so drop the whole thing from
Right,
4
yeah.
lane to 3 lane with bike lanes. We felt it was right at the threshold of too much daily volume. It could be questionable in the future should traffic volumes grow for that 3 lane section. So we came back with an alternative to make that existing traffic light more efficient. So right now it's only really serving 3 legs because it's not serving the McDonald's entrance, and there's some problems with the other drive-through entrance coming into the functional area of the intersection. Our idea at that time was to relocate the Martin's primary entrance over to Blue Ridge.
Yeah.
So this is basically achieving that without moving the road. So this will be designed as a single system. Even though it's 2 signal heads, they'll be running on the same controller and they'll be running in tandem. So it'll be acting operationally as one
Both created
signal.
at the same time, or both right at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
It's actually,
sense.
it's actually in the notes.
Right. Sorry.
Nope.
Okay, do we all agree to go ahead and get the application moved?
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody? Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna submit the application by the 17th. We're gonna draft a resolution.
October,
What's that?
by October.
The application?
No, resolution by October.
Right.
Bye.
The application's the 17th of August. The draft resolution, we'll bring it to a work council session. Once we get a general sense from council, we'll submit it to Vdot. We can submit that draft resolution and then start the process for the public hearing, as long as that's done by October 1. Right?
Yes.
Okay. It's okay, then let's get started on it then, immediately then.
That concludes our report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Item 6 tonight is proposed amendments to the Town Code Charter, Chapter 138, peddlers, solicitors, and itinerant merchants. Yeah?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, let me get to that section one moment, please. Okay, you have in front of you clarification of the code, and Doug, I don't know, if George, did you want to discuss this, or you want me to carry it? I know George.
Either way.
Well, you can go ahead.
All right. Let me get the front page on it. Town council is asked to consider Chapter 138 to allow for the sale of frozen desserts from vending vehicles operating on town streets pursuant to a peddler's and business license. Currently, the town code prohibits conducting business from any town streets. And Mr. Sonnet wrote this up, and what he's done in terms of selling things, and what he's written is in yellow, the distances from various properties, town properties and whatnot, and speed limits and things of that nature. It admittedly is arbitrary, and it's just a point for town council to begin discussion. But what he wants to do is to allow and make it legal for basically peddlers to be able to sell ice cream trucks or things of that nature.
Sorry.
So what you're saying now, anybody that's peddling ice cream or anything else that stops on the town street, it's not legal?
Except for one person, and he wants to,
Well, I
his
understand that. I'm just
grandfather
saying
did.
in general, that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
In general, right?
So
general.
this will take care of people stopping, as long as they're at the curb line, and the kids or the adults that buying their ice cream or whatever they're bailing to sell it, has to be on, actually above the curb,
Right.
to some degree.
Yes, sir, and
If it has.
there's a lot of other, if you go through various sections in here, you'll see in particular 138-5, items E. You know, the council may decide some of these are too restrictive. Mr. Sonnet, I brought some of that to Mr. Sonnet's attention, and to his credit, you know, his comment was, I wanted to propose what I felt was the most restrictive ordinance and allow council to pull it back, as opposed to going the other way. So if you see items in here that are a little too onerous, you know, for instance, I'm not certain stopping within 500 feet of school property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wonder what that was about.
You know, I think the idea in some jurisdictions where maybe Mr. Sonic got that is the, you know, kids are at some vendors, the kids are out playing in the playground, and a vendor comes by and sees 100 kids in the playground, they start climbing the fence to buy ice cream. You know, for every action is a reaction, right? So it's, I don't know if you're prepared to, you know, if you wanted to walk through this some more, if you wanted to recommend it as it is, or if you just wanted to go through and redline it tonight. Just wanted to get your input.
What Mr. Sonnet did is he looked at other jurisdictions, other towns and cities, and he found them where they allow this sort of activity to take place, and he picked the ones that had the most restrictive ordinance, and he did that so that, and usually they were larger jurisdictions. And so he thought, well, I'll pick those and then let town council whittle it down to where he thinks it fits front royal the best. But like, you know, if you've got a school, as Mr. Tiedrick pointed out, if you've got school operating and you've got kids in school, you might not want a ice cream truck getting too close to the school, because you've got third graders and they hear the ice cream truck, they're going to be more interested in the ice cream than they are the teacher.
But does that count outside of school hours? Like during school hours, I can understand, but after school hours, if you have a house that's next to the school and you want the ice cream man to stop, like,
All right,
why?
you
Yeah.
Well, also, what
it's
about when the ice cream truck happens to go to the school for,
Yeah,
you
actually,
know,
we have
An
ice
event,
cream
'cause
truck
we
comes
started
for
them to come
special
up there.
events, so,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
different though, that's on property, right?
Yeah.
That's not on,
school property.
it's on school property at that point, it's not on town streets.
Correct, but it says within 500 feet of school.
Yeah.
This is for, but you can always be invited onto private property.
I I don't disagree with you, I'm saying
But the way it
this
reads-
says no stopping within 500 feet of school property.
Well,
Now, if
you
you
see,
wanna
we
add,
can-
unless you're invited.
on
Yeah,
a
we can
town
add
road.
within school hours or something like that.
Right, I
But
think
this-
hours needs to be added in there, because you can have a house right next to the school, like LFK, and then the ice cream truck can't come down your street, says in 500
This
feet.
is vending, I'm sorry, maybe I read this wrong. I thought this was vending from town streets. No?
It is.
Okay, so, but if you're on a property, even in this case, a government property of the schools, then this does not apply to them, right?
No,
Restrictions do
can't
not
come
apply.
on school property. This wouldn't apply to school property.
I thought it was very interesting, 138-4A, it listed all the different things, offering for sale, like ice, wood, I just thought that was interesting,
Well, government's really good at
yeah,
pulling stuff out.
yeah.
As I read this thing, I was wondering, why the importance of this at this point in time? It's the first we've heard of it, so I know about your grandfathering of one ice cream seller.
Well, I
I
know,
mean, my God, it scares me to death when you start talking about peddlers
Well-
going down there with some pots and pans and, you know, whatever else.
well,
Amazon took care of that.
William Huck has been asking for a while about being able to sell his ice cream on the streets. And I think, you know, William's done a lot for the community, and he's done a lot for a lot of the businesses down on Main Street. And I think, in a sense, I feel like we owe this to him. I really do. I think that he's given a lot, and I think we ought to be able to help him out.
Who's the one vendor grandfathered, do you know?
The ice cream man.
Oh,
He's been the only ice cream man for like 30 years.
competition's good.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, if we're gonna allow, I mean, I think it would be restrictive to say, this
Yeah.
person, this business can, this business can't.
Yeah.
I mean, that, I'm kinda surprised we haven't gotten, that somebody hasn't argued that in the past, that why could,
I think that's why we wanted to.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm all about fairness, fair is fair, and, you know,
Well, that's why I asked the question, because,
yeah, no, it's a good
you know, all of a
question,
sudden it
though.
comes up, and I was wondering,
Yeah.
you know, as I read this thing, I was trying to figure out, okay, why are we even talking about it right now?
You're talking about fairness, why don't we go back and rewrite it to make it fair for everybody if we have one person that can be grandfathered?
How do you do that?
I don't know, that's Doug's job.
Just put you in here, right? That's why you get paid the big bucks, right?
Oh, boy.
So, would it be the pleasure of council, if you look at E1 of stopping within 500 feet of school property, would that be an item that council would consider possibly removing that whole section
I would.
and adding it in the future? If there's a problem, you could always add.
And the reason for that is up on Stonewall Drive, just like Natasha said, there's houses on the left and the school on the right. So you couldn't even go down Stonewall Drive at all in relationship to what this would say, within 500 feet.
Yeah, those poor kids would never get ice cream.
Or you could say,
Happy Ridge.
you know, no stopping within, during school hours.
Yeah. School hours make sense, and I don't think the ice cream truck goes around.
Quite honestly, I don't
before
even
school
know how
hours.
we need that at all. I just think sometimes
Well,
we add in word, you know, it's all about government control, and it's like, they're not gonna be stopping at the school property, I wouldn't think, anyway,
I don't
right?
know whether it's Mr. Huck or whether it's Hollis. Hollis doesn't even start running his truck until at least 3, 4 o'clock after.
Right.
Right, yeah.
So
But whatever.
So
the kids
pleasure,
are home by that time and
Because they gotta get their dollars for their parents.
Yeah, the kids don't have money in
so it'd be
their
your
pockets.
pleasure to take that sentence out?
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to
Please.
see that out.
Any other? Everything else seemed pretty benign
Number
to
2
me.
seems reasonable.
was there anything else in there stands out that would be?
The hours,
pretty much-
you know, 8 o'clock, I think that's a reasonable time.
reasonable. I like
It's starting to get dark in the summer.
Sure.
I don't wanna hear vending before 10 AM.
Oh, I say,
My kids
I
would
say
jump
change
on
that
bed
to
for
6 a.m.
6 AM?
6 a.m.
It's
a wonderful life
coming
going
down
on.
the street.
Breakfast.
I said, it's a wonderful life.
My pocket trying to get
Yeah,
money.
fruit in it.
Good night, buddy.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, you want this on the,
Well, I mean, if it's okay with the rest of the council, I have no problem with it. I just wanna make sure we don't put something in there that's
I
gonna
like it.
restrict somebody greater than someone else that has the same operation.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what, I mean, I read it, but, I mean, I didn't know that some of these things were even considered. After I read this, I thought everything was okay before, when we passed it back in, I believe it's 17. I think I saw that somewhere, yeah, 12, 11, 17. So I don't know, I mean, I think really, I'd like to have it on the agenda, but I also would like to make sure that you or Doug and George go through it and make sure that there's no other major restrictions on here that's going to force Mr. Huck or anyone, whoever else, that he can't do something where the one that's already been grandfathered in can go ahead and do it. It may not be anything, I don't
Give
know.
him the grandfather.
Yeah, we can war game it one more time.
Well, what's troubling me in this whole process, you're only talking ice cream. I read peddlers, and I bring it up again. I don't want some guy coming pulling my driveway selling me pots and pans and knives and whatever else comes down the road. I'm serious. I mean, I read peddlers, and I,
Put a sign in your yard, there's no peddlers.
Well, that's part of the order.
well, I know, but I read it. I kept looking at it.
That unfortunately or not, that's what it's called in state code, so that's what we have to call it.
I'm just saying, it seems to me it opens it up for sell anything.
Ice cream
Balloons,
will-
hats, whatever you wanna.
Well, like at Apple Blossom, they do all that.
I can sell you some cheap Rolex watches.
I bought those in Iraq.
And those are the special events, right? Special
All right, so we'll take we'll make a decision by Thursday, Mr. Mayor, if we're ready to put it.
Okay. All right, then we'll add it or take it on Thursday. Is there anybody else out in the discussion this evening on any other item?
I do, Mr. Mayor, have one quick report. I am pleased to say that the CARES Act funding and process is working. I will say it's worked flawless, but that's not quite the case. There's been a couple glitches here and there. We've adapted pretty well. We've had a total of 56 applications as of today. 25 have been approved, and we've awarded $225,000.
It's fast.
And so we've turned that around in a week.
That's awesome.
That's good.
Yeah.
Great news.
So it's, we have, I think 11 more in pipeline for approval. So I have something for council to be thinking about, and you may want to just be processing this. It is possible we could get another round of CARES Act funding. There's nothing definitive, but again, it would come from the state through the county to the locality. And so we'll have to have another discussion perhaps if that does happen, have a conversation with the county to see how and what we want to do with it.
What is the deadline for that again, for the CARES, I mean, for their applications?
This Friday.
It's this
Or
Friday?
no, it's the
The 8th, right?
Monday, the 10th?
Monday the 10th at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, Monday the 10th.
If there is additional funds left over, we're gonna start the process again. But there
Most
won't-
likely, if there's funds left over, we can start the process again, maybe do it for 10 days. If that doesn't work, we could always go back. I'll come back to you and say, look, we haven't had any more applications. Do you want to increase the checks to those that have been approved by 50%?
Yeah, okay, that sounds good.
Do you want to use it towards other PD expenses or, so there's a fair amount of flexibility, right, BJ?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Matt, did
You
we
can get
ever,
some more money.
was it ever approved that they could use it for the electrical and all that, or not? I
Yes.
know we discussed it and they said, no, that's starting with
do it,
it, now you can do it now?
Yes, as long as it's used for, what's the buzzword?
Essential services.
Yeah,
Okay.
Like funding the shut-offs?
correct. So if you're being shut off, they could be used. So we could open it up to,
That's strictly businesses.
For businesses, yes.
Right.
Oh, just
Just for businesses.
now we could do residential, can't we?
There are ways we could do residential.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, there seems to be a way we could do that if we wanted to.
Was there any way we could look into that and be prepared if we have the money left over that we can
Yeah,
get to utilize?
yeah, we
it?
have, we have looked into it. I mean, we can get the language, it's on how you publish the language. And we want to make sure we adhere to the parameters of what the CARES Act allows and doesn't allow. We're very comfortable, and plus the county's approving it as well. So we have a lot of different eyes.
Plus, this whole thing is gonna be audited at the end, that's why we have that September date in there.
Correct.
Because we took out, was 40,000?
Yes.
We put aside to have an auditing process, so we don't have to worry about
That's town
that.
and county.
Feel free as a council to tell, like, if you're in businesses, to tell people, there's one particular business that I'm at a lot, and I told them about it, and I think just because they probably aren't reading the newspaper, aren't, when the social media, they weren't aware of it, so I went in there last Friday and gave them the website and said, do this now, this is gonna help you, because they had lost quite a bit of money through the pandemic, so I was just saying that, just keep passing the word.
And it's, I'll show you where it is on our website while we're there.
It's pretty easy.
Sorry.
It's reach.
He's trying to go sideways. You need an extra W.
Sorry, guys. I wanted to show you what it is on the website as well. I can't see.
Do the extra W. And then press. Jake, stop.
I'm gonna help you with your prescription there.
Well, anyway, you guys get the idea.
You ever go to that website?
You need an N in front, so front.
Oh, my problem with it is I
I
can't
know.
see it from
I
there,
know
it's so
you can't.
small.
I know.
www.frontrontylva.com.
And I think if you do backspace,
There
CARES.
we
It's
go.
right
just
there,
like
yeah.
we just like.
Okay, all right, so you see the CARES Act button at the front page,
Oh, okay.
CARES
There it
Act
is,
grant.
yeah.
So if you want to tell people to go directly there, you can tell them to go to frontroyalva.com/cares, and it takes them straight to the portal. They click here, and they go in and just start answering the questions. So it's a really slick operation. It's paperless, and what we do is we verify that they have a business license. We verify if they have past due utility bills. We have a diligent town employee that is documenting that. She approves it, moves it to the next level. An email goes out to the business, saying you've passed the first, your application's been submitted and reviewed, and then then it's allocated towards a reviewer. So it's a pretty good operation we have.
There are actually 3 checks in the process.
That's right, Mr. Seelock's on the committee.
There's one for a town employee, goes through and verifies they have a license and and they were in business before, and she documents all that. Then the first viewer goes through and they verify the loss or the close down due to the executive order. And once you review the receipts or whatever they provide that they have an actual loss, then you go in and say, yes, I agree. So that's the first one. Then the second one goes through and verifies again. Then it comes back, the third person is the approver that will actually process it for a check.
I'm sure they're very grateful. I mean, I'm grateful we could do this.
And the forms actually do work, I can tell you. I spent a weekend just sitting there going through it. Friday and Saturday.
He submitted 8 applications himself.
Should have.
Matt, did we want Mr. Aldrich to come on the 17th at 7 at the work session to be able to answer some questions?
Sure. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else? Anybody else have anything? Okay, at this time, we're gonna go into closed meeting for personnel and pending litigation. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move the town council go into closed session to discuss and consider the 1, assignment, employment, promotions, performance, and salaries of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of the town pursuant to section 2.2-3711.a.1 of the Code of Virginia, and 2, consultation with legal counsel and briefing by staff members of consultants pertaining to actual and probable litigation with the EDA where such consultation or briefing in open meetings would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of town council. Probable litigation, meaning litigation that has been specifically threatened or on which the public body or its legal counsel has a reasonable basis to believe will be commenced by or against a known party pursuant to section 2.2-3711.a.7 of the Code of Virginia.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, carried.
Thank you.
Thank everybody for coming.
Miss Laura, would you stay? David, stay. BJ, and
Can we do
Doug,
a
I see you
quick
need to have a
potty
step.
break?
Yes, 5 minutes.
Sorry.